Or is someone working that hard to paint a certain picture? Because the thing is,
Nobody can hear me either. Okay, there I am.
All right, now Carol, I'm gonna mute everybody again. Sorry guys, I'm just gonna mute everybody just because we tend to get lots of background noise. And then just know this time is really for you guys. You are welcome to chime back in. Carol, you'll have to unmute yourself. I can't find you again. You're welcome to unmute yourself, raise your hand, ask a question, comment. If you've got some feedback or perspective that you'd like to offer the group, please feel free to do that. That's the real value of this whole experience, is being able to share information with each other. And today it's just Carol and I. Carol, are you back on in here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. There she is. And we have a very special guest. Carol, can you kind of share with us who the special guest is?
Yes, this is Mr. Joseph Johnson, and he's actually retired NYPD, moved to Florida a number of years ago. He was actually a graduate of mine. Joe, when did you graduate? A long time ago.
Got to be over 5 years.
Yeah. And since then, he's done a lot of things, but he owns his own private investigation firm. And he's all about safety. He does a lot of things for us, our newsletter and stuff. And he's one of our merchants on our merchant page that people can talk to him about the issue of safety, private investigations, and that kind of thing. So so this is Joe. And
Awesome,
I welcome Joe.
Yeah, and I have a visitor.
Aww.
Well,
two special guests.
not on TV.
Well,
Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
That's all right. I'd do anything for Carol.
Well, I know that especially after just touring through Florida and meeting a lot of Florida notaries, actually personal safety is a prime concern, as it should be for most people. So maybe you could tell us a little bit how a mobile notary, both on general notary side and the loan signing side, can help protect themselves as they're going to their appointments.
Well, you want to help?
Take it with you.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that everybody's got to do is actually kind of like plan out what they're doing. It's almost like a flight plan. Okay. Let's face it. You're going to see somebody you really don't know. Okay. You got a call from a title company or a bank, and somebody says, "We need you to go to this location, and we need you to go and see these people and sit down with them in their environment." It's not like you're going to somebody's bank. Sometimes you do go to a bank, which makes it a completely different animal. But when you go to somebody's house, you want, before you go, you should let somebody know where you're going, what time you plan on getting there, how long basically it should be to complete the signing, and how long it should take for you to get back home. You should have your cell phone. You should have an extra battery for your cell phone, just in case, okay? In your car, make sure your car is locked, because you're going to have sensitive papers in that car. You're going to have your notary stamp and all your other paperwork to go with it. And you just want to make, God forbid, you do a signing and you get to, I'm going to stop in the store and get a soda or something. You come out and the package is gone. What are you going to do? Now you got to print it, go back, explain to everybody. So, safeguards, and just, aware of your surroundings, just to make sure that, you get to where you're going, you finish what you're supposed to do, you verify everybody's information, and just make sure that you have, a lot of it's common sense. If you're a notary, you should have enough common sense to know what you're doing. Okay. Other than that, like I said, if you're nervous about going to a location, I mean, you can map it out ahead of time. You can see the kind of neighborhood you're going to. If you're not comfortable with going, then call the title company and say, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable going there. Now, on the other side of the coin, I get calls in the middle of the night to go to nursing homes and hospitals and tow yards and everything else, for people that are basically on their deathbed, that haven't signed their paperwork for the family, for them to pay bills and everything else. And believe it or not, you have to be cognizant of the fact that the people you're going to see should be should be, competent and mentally able to understand that they're signing papers giving somebody else their rights to take over their finances and other legal obligations. I've had a few try and pull fast ones on me. I said, the guy thought I was Abraham Lincoln. I said, do you know who the president is? He says, you are. I says, I am. Okay. I says, do you know what year it is? He says, yeah, 2096. I said, okay. I said, do you know where you are? He says, Mars. I says, I'm not signing papers for this guy. He doesn't know he has no mental capacity to understand what he's doing. And then they want to argue with you. And I tell people, I said, look, you got to wait outside. I want to interview this guy by himself. I don't want anybody in here trying to influence this guy. Okay? You have to understand, I carry $100,000 in E&O, and if something goes wrong, who's responsible? I am. So people have to understand. You have to be. I'm not saying you have to be a lawyer, but you have to understand. And I don't want you to be a detective, but you have to know certain questions to ask when you go to these situations. That people do try and defraud other people by getting them to sign a signature, and when they have a notary, notarize that signature, it seems like it's on the up and up for everybody. I ran into a case down here in Miami. I got a call from New York, friends of mine. Their grandmother had died, 98 years old. 6 months earlier, she signed over a new last will and testament just to a neighbor. And when I started looking into it, I started asking questions about, well, who notarized the new paperwork? And they said it was a lawyer who's 86 years old. And I said, where was this notarized? In his office. I said, 97 or whatever, however old she was, who was wheelchair bound, got in a car, drove all the way down to South Miami to sign a new will and testament. I says, there's something's rotten in Denmark on this one. And it was turned over to a lawyer, but because the last will and testament had been signed, the guy went to the bank and drew out $250,000 out of the bank. Now it's up to the family to go after this lawyer and the witnesses that were supposedly signed on the new last will and testament. But it happens. It happens a lot. It's not just an isolated incident. There's a lot of people out there that want to defraud other people.
Hey, Joe, we're getting some feedback that people cannot hear you even with their volume up. Would you mind just maybe speaking a little louder if it's at all possible?
Yeah.
Or maybe a little closer to the computer.
How's that? A little better? Yeah. You want to get the microphone?
I think you bring up some good points here, Joe, especially and it just really highlighting the importance of notaries knowing what they can and can't do in their specific state. So I really appreciate the reminder on that. And then also, I'd like to move back into the personal safety as well. You brought up a point that if somebody is uncomfortable in a particular area after looking at the address or any type of scenario, would there also be an option to move the appointment to an area where they are more comfortable, like a Starbucks or a Denny's or some other location?
That to me would be up to the title company, that you contact the title company or the bank and say, listen, I'm not comfortable. I'm not going to this neighborhood. Okay. Well, there are bad neighborhoods, there are good neighborhoods, and there are intermediate neighborhoods. People, these aren't cops that are going into a bad neighborhood. These are notaries. These are mostly, business people. If you're not comfortable going to an area and you obviously know the address before you're going to go, it would, behoove you to look up the address and see where it is. And if you're not comfortable, you call back the title company or the signing company or whoever's giving you the assignment and say, listen, I don't like the time, and I'm sorry if you can't accommodate me at a more reasonable, safe location for my own personal safety, then maybe you should find somebody else. And it's a shame that anybody would want to turn down, whatever the signing fee is. But on the other hand, you want to go there, you want to do what you're supposed to do, and you want to come home, and you don't want any problems or issues. So that's one of the options you can do, or maybe you want to bring somebody with you.
Well, your safety is paramount.
Exactly. They can always sign those papers. They can do another date, but your safety is what's mostly important. I tell people all the time, the first duty of a police officer is to go home alive at the end of a shift. The same thing with a notary. If you go out on a job, the first, what your first duty is your protection, personal protection, and then coming home, to upload the documents and have a cup of tea and go to bed. But other than that, nobody should be put in a position that they feel uncomfortable in any situation. So even a notary, and, in some countries, I'm told, notaries are so revered as like big government officials. Here, you're commissioned in Florida, you're commissioned by the governor's office. And, it's not a government title per se, but, you are representing the governor's office. So, you also have that responsibility to act like a person. Carol, your courses have always spelled out. How do you feel about, identifying somebody? When can you refuse to do a notary? And that's important too. You got to keep up on these current situations to make sure. I'm not going to get involved in something where if I say no, then they're going to come after me because I said no without good cause.
Right. There's a couple things I would like to interject that you talked about, and I want to kind of emphasize it. Something I teach. When you're going to a facility, whether it be a home, a hospital, whatever, to do something as important as a power of attorney or a will, one of the things when you're dealing especially with someone older or someone who might be ill, I always advise my students to empty the room. That's like pretty much the first thing to do is ask everyone to please leave the room, because you need to have a conversation with the signer by themselves, because people are very intimidated. They've got grandbaby sitting over there and he's like, oh, come on, grandma, you need to do this. No, you don't want anybody in the room. I don't hesitate. I don't wait to see who's there. I just empty the room and then have a conversation with the signer. Also, somebody else, Beth Hathtoot, I don't know, she's here. She just talked about a program that I'd like to see if she could expand on. Beth, are you there?
Yeah, Beth, this Life 360 sounds really interesting. Are you in a place where you can unmute and tell us a little more about it?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can.
Yes.
Yeah, Life 360 is a free app that you can get in the Google Play Store. Now, I don't know if it is Apple compatible, but it certainly is Android. And you just download the app. You will create a circle of family or friends, people that you're notifying. The minute your phone starts moving, that app will give a tone or notification to everybody that's in your circle that you're on the move. My husband kind of knows my schedule, so when he gets that notification, he says to himself, she's going to her 10 o'clock appointment. When I get to that appointment, I just tap and open that app, and there's a check-in in the upper right-hand corner where I will check in. He'll actually get a notification that says Beth is at or near, and it'll give a specific address.
Wow.
That sounds like a very good tool for people that you know, that want to.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the name.
It's called Life 360.
Thank you.
Beth, I want to talk to you about that later. I want to send out an email, if not in our newsletter. I want to tell everybody about that. That's great information. Thank you.
It also has a security feature where you can, if you can actually get to your phone, if you're in a situation that's life-threatening, you can actually send an alert, and it will notify everybody in your circle, and you can set up local fire or police notifications as well. So it's a really good app, and it's free.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Joe, can I ask you a question? How do you feel about telephones, cell phones at the signing? On the table, on your body, in your purse, in your case, where do you think that a cell phone should be during a signing, especially if you're a little uncomfortable? For you, yeah, you, Joe.
I put it right on the table. Let the people see. Look, you know, again, you're there, and it's important for you to feel safe. Your phone is your line of communication to whoever. That's fine. I would put it on the table. I wouldn't want to have to reach for it, you know, for any reason. But if it's on the table, even if something would have happened, I mean, you still have to reach for it. But it's there on the table. It may be psychologically effective for you to see, or the people see, look, he's got his phone, okay, and it's, you know, it's an iPhone or whatever, and, you know, you could, you know, I sometimes get phone calls when I'm in the middle of something, and I'll look to see who it is, and then what I'll do is I'll either mute it or say, excuse me, I do need to take this. Okay? So this way they know that there's an active phone in the house, and somebody can actually just reach over and hit, you know, number one. A lot of people have emergency numbers set up on their phone. All you have to do is tap the number one, or whatever type of phone you have. I don't know. Between an iPhone and an Android phone, you know, you have auto dial, and, you know, depending on where you are and what 911 system you're hooked up into, they may be able to see where you are. You know, it is what it is. But everybody should just, you know, like I said, be aware of your surroundings. Use your common sense. If you don't feel comfortable going to a place, or when you get to a place and you don't feel comfortable, I mean, you're not going to go into the Munsters mansion or go into the, you know, some you know, place that looks like it's a haunted house, and, you know, you're not going to go into those places for obvious reasons. And it's quite frankly, it's okay for you to say, no, I'm not going to do this, and I'm going to call the title company and say, no, I'm sorry, I don't feel safe going here. You know, you're not being paid to be, you know, all this kind of money just to go and put yourself in a position that, quite frankly, you know, could be detrimental or harmful. You've had in the pits, not so much with notaries, but real estate agents have been murdered.
Yeah.
They get to meet a client at an abandoned house, or a house that's empty, and next thing you know, they disappeared, and 3 days later, they find them stuffed in the backyard. It's happened quite a few times. So it's up to you how you want to handle your situation when you're retained by a title company, and you're an independent. You're an independent signer. It's not like you're working for a big company and everybody's going to be, oh, I can call up and say this. Look, your reputation is what your reputation is. Okay. Me personally, I don't care where I go. It doesn't matter to me. I walk down streets in the South Bronx where everybody wanted me dead. So it doesn't matter to me where I go. You know, I know what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. And that's, quite frankly, I have no problem going anywhere. Like I said, I go to hospitals and nursing homes in the middle of the night. So you're out driving around. You know, this is South Florida. So, you got to be careful when you're out driving too. You could become the target of somebody wanting to steal your car or whatever, So again, you just use your common sense, keep it, like I said, your safety thing is to let everybody know up front where you're going, what time you should be getting there, what time and how long it should be there for you to take to do the signing, and how long it should take to get home. If something goes awry, you have your phone. And again, like I said, have an extra battery just in case. It doesn't hurt. Or at least have a charging cord in the car, so you can plug it in if you're dying on the way home. Not you dying, but the phone dying.
And Joe, what kind of things can we do now that we're in the holiday season? We're right in the center of it right now. What can we do to protect ourselves when we're out going to the grocery store, doing our Christmas shopping and that kind of thing? What kind of hints do you have that might, things we haven't thought of before?
Well, again, most police departments will put out notices for safety during the holidays, but it's good to know them year round. Don't park at the furthest end of a parking lot, okay, where it's unlit maybe. Just park as close as you can. Look to see if the parking lot that you go into or the shopping center has security. Keep an eye around. Usually cops have these pavilions that go up in the air on a bar that it's like a watchtower from a prison, and they can look over the whole parking lot. You just keep your eyes open, see what's what, and like I said, don't leave your packages in the back seat, okay? That they're visible from anybody walking by. Put them in the trunk, okay? If you see anybody getting close to you, just keep walking. Don't stop. Don't try and get in your car. Just keep walking. Go walk back to the store. Walk back to if you see security, or walk back to where you see people. Don't allow yourself to be trapped in a secluded area, especially in the garages at the malls. Okay, most of these malls now have these blue light poles, and they're just automatic. You hit it, the light goes off, the siren goes off, and it automatically notifies security or the local police. So always try and keep aware of where you see them, and know where your car is when you go in. You don't want to be in the Seinfeld episode. I don't know where the car is. What level are we on? Write it down. Write down where you are. Okay. You have a clicker. You usually have an alarm. You can hit your alarm to see where is the car, and that's also good if somebody is around you. Turn the siren on. Turn the alarm on the car.
Okay. Well, Joe, I really appreciate everything that you've talked to us about this morning.
You can also, Carol, depending on the state you live in, there's nothing wrong with, say, maybe buying a pepper spray for your keychain either. Okay, but know the ramifications of using it. Know what the law is for your state of carrying a chemical spray or pepper spray. Usually, pepper spray is legal, but I'm not saying everybody should have it. And if you are going to carry it, make sure that you understand what the rules of your state are in using it, and know what to do if you do use it. So, that's a radical alternative. Okay. And that's, again, like I said, this is the silly season. A lot of people are going to be out looking for crimes of opportunity. They're just going to react on it fast. So that's the other thing. You have to expect the unexpected. I hate to say that, but this is the world we live in now. You really do.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Joe. And I think, really, when you take everything that you said, what we're talking about here is just situational awareness, being aware of your surroundings. And I think one of the big the things that lead us away from that is the distraction. Most of us are so involved in our cell phones whenever we're walking through parking lots, walking out the doors, we're talking, we're texting, we're emailing, or we're pulling up to a house and we're doing whatever we're doing on our phone. We're completely oblivious to what's going around. So that's one thing that I think you could do just to help get that situational awareness that Joe's talking about. Just be present in what's going on, be aware of who's around you, what's around you. That would be very helpful. The other thing I really wanted to just drive home too, guys, is as far as risk go, obviously there's a risk in anything that we do in any business, but When it comes to loan signings, those are probably a little lower on the risk chain than your general notary work appointments. And I really wanted to talk about that because general notary work appointments, this is the general public contacting you. You have no one else to answer to. So trust your gut. And even I, where I'm relatively fearless. Like that's part of, I'm a terrible target for somebody. But still, I don't want to put myself in situations where I'm that uncomfortable or constantly stressed out. And you're going to feel that too. So for my general notary work appointments, I require a public place. So it's going to be Starbucks. It's going to be Denny's. It might be the QT, but it's going to be in front of the QT door, the gas station. But you have the control to make those appointments where they are. And don't get too attracted to the revenue that you're making where you forsake your own safety. Because nothing matters if you can't enjoy it anyway. So don't have any hesitation on your general notary work appointments. Now, on loan signings, Joe makes a really good point. You can renegotiate with the title company or the signing company. What I found to be the most powerful, though, and easier to communicate is directly with the borrower. In fact, some borrowers actually prefer that you don't come to their house because they're already stressing out about cleaning or they're embarrassed because they're moving. So they actually can feel some relief when you say, hey, what do you think about meeting around at the Starbucks around the corner from your house instead? So there's all kinds of different ways that you can work around that. Joe, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you joining our call today.
I have just usually when I would get a notice of where they want to have it, I'll call the borrower or the lender, whoever it is that's going to be signing the papers. I'll call them ahead of time and say, look, I want to verify your address. I want to verify the time. And 50-50, it's been different. It has been different. So it's better to call these people ahead of time and ask them, do you want me to come to the house? Do you want me to come to an office? Does this time have to be at 7 o'clock tonight? I have the papers. Do you want to do it earlier? Okay. Do you want to do it at your work location? Do you want to do it so you can get this more convenient out of your way instead of me meeting you at maybe 8 o'clock at night after you've been at work all day and you come home and you're tired? The last thing you really want to do is to start signing, 100, 150 pages of a closing document. But if you want to knock this out earlier, okay. And I've had a lot of people say, yeah, meet me at this place, bring the papers, we'll do it there, we'll knock it out. I said, I have no problem. And then I'll call the title company and say, it's been a change, okay, just so you know. And then everybody's on the same page. So it's good to call the borrower or the seller and say, is this information correct? This is your phone number. This is your address. Do you want to do it here? Do you want to do it a little early? Do you want to do it a little later? It really doesn't matter. If you've already accepted the assignment, you're more or less, obligated to do what they want since they're the ones that are really paying you in the long run. So.
Awesome, Joe. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all your insight and advice here. Thank you for joining us today. Carol, thank you for inviting Joe in. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to some of our questions. We're a little light on questions, so I appreciate everybody chiming in on the chat window here. We had a really good one that talking about inclement weather. So Judy asks, what about during inclement weather and loan signings? Do you ever call and say it's unsafe driving conditions? I live in Phoenix, so I don't get many of these. Carol, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I hear it a lot because I have students all over the country and sometimes they're in really bad situations. And my advice is there's no signing that is worth going out in the middle of a snowstorm when you've got the possibility of some really horrible things happening. It's just not worth it. And most companies understand that. So protect your safety. Safety's at most. That's what I tell my students. It's the most important. And there will be another day when those papers can be signed and do it in a safety. And I want to set one of the, Melissa, I think her name was, if I can back up a little bit, she had something to add too, which I thought was true and interesting. Let me see. Melissa Ingeseth Spencer. I don't know where she is, but yeah, she said, sometimes the signers really don't want you at their home. There are people who are kind of distrusting of a stranger coming into their home. So it is a good idea to discuss that. We always kind of presumed that when it was set at their home, that that's where it was going to be. But I found over the years that, oh my God, phones are crazy. Hold on a minute. Okay. Anyway, I found that sometimes people would say, well, do we really have to have it here? My house is really messy. I don't want you here, or whatever. So that's something to think about too.
Yeah, that's very true, especially some of these larger signing companies. Sometimes they're not even really having conversations with the signer. They're just scheduling it and saying, this is when your appointment is. And there have been a few of the big ones where I've noticed this trend. So in my confirmation, just like Joe was saying, I'll just say, hey, they have this scheduled for 4. Is this still the best time for you? Now, you can be as flexible as your schedule allows. I recommend no matter what, you still communicate things up the chain, especially when it comes to purchases. When it comes to purchases and even in reverse mortgages, a lot of times real estate agents, loan officers, especially in reverse mortgages, they're planning to be there at the appointment. So if there's some sort of change in the time, that affects other people. And you don't want to be the guy that has a loan officer showing up to 4 when the appointment's been bumped to 6.
And especially in your area, because when we were in Phoenix, there was a loan officer at almost every reverse mortgage that we did. Those people are great, by the way.
Yep. Reverse mortgages, you'll get a lot.
I've had where the real estate agent or the loan officer, they know it's all verified. For argument's sake, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and 4:15 comes, 4:20 comes, and I said, you know what? If they show up, they show up, okay?
Yeah.
But we don't have to wait for them. You're the one that's signing. If they want to be here, it's incumbent upon them to be here, for you and for me and for them. There's no reason to wait around an hour because they're not there. Really, it's not fair to the notary. It's not fair to the buyer or the seller, and it's something that people have to. You want to give them 15 minutes, fine. Otherwise, then we start signing.
Well, I'll tell you that real estate agents, and no offense to any of them if they're on the phone, but they are notoriously late for appointments. Now, after I'll call people out on it though, especially if I know them and we have a relationship going on.
Yeah.
What I've learned is that a lot of them strategically show up late because they don't want to sit through the entire signing. If that's conveyed to the borrower, everything's fine, but sometimes it's not, and that's where the friction might happen. But a lot of them just like to show up for the last 15, 20 minutes of it and give a gift basket and a hug and then be on their way.
Can I add to that? Because this is important for anybody out there if they haven't dealt with this before. God love real estate agents, okay? But I've been to so many of them where we've been doing purchases, and you'll get the sellers and you'll get the buyers, real estate agents in there. And they're both vying for, I can do it better. I know more. And you have to, when you have a situation like that, you have to be really firm, and you have to let everybody know, look, this is my job. I am here to do this. And in the most expeditious and, quickest way that we can get through this. So I'm going to ask you guys, I know you have a lot to talk about, but I'm going to ask you to please just hang on to all that information long enough for me to get through this signing, because if you don't do that, they will overrun you. The first couple of times that happened, and I was kind of new at this, many, many years ago, and that was that they walked all over me. And I learned early on that if you have a signing and realtors show up, you can be friendly, you can be kind, but you have to be firm. You have to let them know what you're there for. And the quicker you're out of there, the more opportunity that they're going to have to impress the buyers and the sellers with whatever they want to do.
Carol, the worst people that you have to deal with when you're doing either a sell or a buy, okay, depending on what the situation is when the buyer or the seller is, are you ready? An attorney.
Oh, well.
Because the attorney wants to read every single document before they sign it to make sure it is what they already agreed to. And I say to them, didn't you get an advance copy of this to go over and approve for the title company? Yes, but I just want to make sure. I said, okay.
You know, I found exactly the opposite. That they don't read anything,
Yeah.
but get an engineer and you're there.
Engineers.
You're lucky. I get the guys
Right?
that want to scrutinize every page, and especially to
Maybe if they're
the
representing somebody
and
else.
the note. They want to read every page of the mortgage.
What's your experience been, Bill?
So in my experience, lawyers are just that. Yeah, if they want to show off, they will read everything and start making corrections on the document. We all know how that goes. Making corrections on the document, whether you're an attorney or not, does not work. But engineers, if I see, and it's not every engineer, software engineers are usually pretty cool. It's the structural and the civil engineers that like to understand how everything works and how it all works together and everything. They will literally read almost every word. And I've only had 4 full-on readers in all of my signings, and it took 3 or 4 hours. But they were, one was an attorney who was showing off, and then 3 of them were engineers.
I think my longest signing ever was a reverse mortgage for a guy that was about 97 years old, and it took him about 4 minutes to make each signature.
Oh my gosh.
I was there for close to 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
I said, "What's outside? Is the hearse outside or the ambulance?" Because one or the other. Somebody's going out of here today. And I called the title company, the company, and I told them, "Look, this was an extremely long signing." I said, "You got to compensate me for this." I said, "I missed another signing because I was stuck with your client." They doubled the fee.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic when it works out for you. Okay, let's take a look at. We're pretty light on questions, so I want to open it up on here. Is there anybody who's been sitting on a question, maybe even in just the last couple of weeks, you haven't sent it in, or maybe you did and we missed it, or you've got something, whether about Joe's conversation or anything for Carol and I. And we missed Laura, by the way. I forgot to announce in the beginning, Laura is out this week, but she'll be back next week.
And anybody had any interesting experiences like what we're talking about? I think we all get a kick out of hearing stories that we've gone through that are a little unusual, like the things with the attorneys and the engineers and that kind of thing. So just let us know.
No pressure here. We do have a couple of questions I want to get to. So bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to share the screen here.
Bill?
Yes. Who's that?
This is Peggy.
Hey, Peggy, how's it going?
It's good, Bill. I used to do real estate, and the one thing I just thought of along what Joe was talking about is be aware when you go into a house, and being a real estate agent, we toured the house, so you probably wouldn't have to do that as a signing agent, but you still might be entrapped in a house just because you're unfamiliar with it, and maybe they offer to do a signing in a certain room. Keep aware that you're not going to get trapped, and so I just wanted to comment there.
Awesome, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, and that kind of falls in line with what Carol was talking about. And Carol, I think you call it gentle control.
Yeah.
It's deciding where the signing is going to take place. Now, as a signing agent especially, you're going to see some weird places for signings. I mean, I've signed on dumpsters. I've signed awkwardly in the back seat of my own car because the guy had this weird situation. I have signed on lawn chairs, on bricks, weird situations. But when you enter somebody's home, they're not always aware that there's 200 pages that have to be signed. Some of them, for whatever reason, they think this is a little flick of the wrist and the keys are theirs. So they're not really prepared. They're not thinking it through as much as you can. So they're going to try to say, well, here, let's just sit on the couch and you can sign on your kneecap. And there's a perfectly good table sitting in the other room. So you can kind of take control of those situations and just say, hey, look, this is 200 pieces of paper. I have to make sure they get all signed, dated, and initialed correctly. Why don't we move to this table? Or why don't we clear the bar off because it's stacked high with, Beth, I think you commented on the hoarder situations. I've had several hoarder situations. And it's okay to take that gentle control and find a clear space so you can do your job effectively, or even suggest that you move it to a Starbucks or another location. All right, excellent.
Speaking of hoarders, I'm just going to interject one. I did one in Phoenix area. I've done several over the years. This one was really bad, really bad. When it was over, thank God it wasn't very big, I had to stand through it. We found a place for the woman to sit after cleaning it off. And my husband and I were both there. And when the signing was finished, I bolted out the back door. And my husband followed me and he says, "What is wrong with you? You were so rude." I told him it was either that or I was getting sick in the house. It was so bad. And I swore I would never go into a home like that again. And I tell my students, don't put yourself through that.
Bill,
It was one of the worst I've ever seen. And it's sickening. You can't breathe. You don't know where you're stepping and what you're stepping into. So I just tell people, don't do it. If you walk up to a home and you see, the first thing I saw was half of a kitchen floor and nothing but Walmart bags of new things hanging from every cupboard handle in the kitchen. That was just the beginning. The rest was filth.
That sounds like the Addams Family.
No, it's worse. Way worse.
The way I kind of rule it is if I smell it before I see it, I'm going to ask to reschedule. And usually, it's funny though, guys. What I've learned is to not argue with people when they want to change the venue. So when I first started, I'm like, no, this is convenient. Let me come to you. Let me come to you. Even when they're like, can we just meet at the Starbucks? I'm like, no, let's capitalize on the convenience of this. And then you walk into what they were avoiding. So I don't even question it anymore. If they want to reschedule this thing and move on to guys, I'm going to have to hit mute. We've got I apologize, but there is some weird background noise happening. So I'm going to mute everybody. Sorry, guys. So if you are looking to ask a question, you'll just have to unmute yourself one more time. But please remember to mute yourself again so we don't get that high-pitched background. Okay, there is another question. That's the second time. I'm sorry, Selena. Why, if ever, have either of you refused to notarize? For me, mostly identification reasons. If they can't prove their identity or if they got something fishy about their ID. I've also, very oftentimes for general notary work, I get people who contact me and they're like, oh, my mom signed this already. Can you notarize it? And she's already moved to North Dakota, so she's not here. I get a lot of those, so I refuse to notarize those things.
I have one that's kind of a lesson, and I talk to my students about this one because it really brought home my responsibilities as a notary public. I was called by a church group to go to a woman's home. She was dying of cancer, and she was in bed. And they told me they felt terrible for the husband because the husband had no access to any of the finances. And he had no food, he had no money. I went there, I spent 2.5 hours trying to get to that moment, if it was even possible, to get this woman coherent enough to understand what we were doing and relate that to me. I spent a lot of time on this. These people really liked the husband and they felt really terrible for him. And in the end, I couldn't do it. She didn't know what she was doing. And even though she'd kind of get coherent once in a while, I knew that this was not going to happen. After 2.5 hours, I left the home. I got a call the next morning. She had passed away during the night. And I felt really guilty for a while. I thought, oh, the poor husband. And then I got to thinking about it. And this is why I'm using this, because I use my stories as a teaching thing. But I got to thinking about it, thought about it all day, the next day. And I thought, we don't know what circumstances there was. Why was he not on the financial papers? Why was he not on the bank account? Maybe they were going through a divorce. Maybe he was a bad guy. She didn't want him to be on anything. Maybe it was a second marriage or a third marriage, and she wanted her children to get everything. I didn't know those circumstances, and it wasn't my decision to make that. So you've got to take the emotion sometimes out of what you're doing, even though your heart tells you something different. You have to stop and realize what your responsibilities are. And I realized that time, and that taught me a lesson that lasted me for years, that you can't make that kind of judgment. You have to do your job, and you do it the right way, and that's the end of it. And you can't kick yourself for not performing.
Exactly. Yep. Great tips, guys. I'm going to shift gears here for a little bit, guys, because we're in the last few minutes of the call. It's already been 45 minutes. It's been awesome. But I did, in our emails, promise to share some one marketing tool for you. And you've got some great marketing questions coming through right now, in particular about the builder business. I'm very passionate about the builder business. This is how I really built my most successful business. So the question is, how do you market to builders, and what is different about that? And there's some nuance to it, but really this is still just boils down to relationships. It's just going to be strategically finding those relationships. And I've actually talked quite a bit about this on YouTube, in my training at Sign In Thrive, and then of course on these calls quite a bit. So I'm going to give you a real quick synapse, and then I'm going to share that tool with you that might actually help with this very situation. So when it comes to builders, the way I did it, guys, is I created my Fab 100 list. It's a list of people I wanted to work with, but I didn't have the connections with. So it was like a dream list, if you will. And it was builders, title companies, whatever it was. But I had heard someone had mentioned that these builders use their own title companies, or they have special relationship with title companies. I happen to live in Phoenix, where the building is going crazy, and I thought, well, that's the business I want, because it's always happening here. So on my list, I put just the name of the builders. You can do Mary Kay Homes, you can do D.R. Horton, you can do, there's thousands of builders all over the country, and hundreds in your area. Ones that you may not even hear of. The big names that can afford the billboards and the commercials, everybody knows them, but there are dozens and dozens of smaller companies that build lots of homes too. And those companies probably just have strategic relationships with particular title companies. The bigger ones own their own title companies. So your job is to find out what those relationships are. When I did it, I had to Google it. So I would just Google, let's just say Mary Kay Homes as an example. And I'd find out, and I'd Google Mary Kay Homes title company. And then I'd look at the results and see if I could find a pattern. Are they working with this title company? That seemed to be popping up a lot. So then I would go to that title company, and I'd research the escrow officers that work at that title company. And then I'd make a list of their names and their contact information. And then I'd go to LinkedIn or Google or Facebook, and I'd research certain information on them in particular. Like, how can I cut through? And then I would customize emails that were about them and about what they were doing. The cool thing is about working with these companies that are doing stuff in the community is they like to brag about it, and their bosses like to brag on them. So on LinkedIn, you can see, oh, congratulations to Mary for hitting this sales record at our title company. So I can reach out and just congratulate. These emails are not dissertations. They're not books. Nobody's going to read anything past like sentence 5 on these. So I know so many of us have created these amazing worded emails, and they have all of how great we are and how passionate we are about our customers and what our fee schedule is and how we're committed to the win-win, which is all stuff that I'm big on, but nobody reads it. Your ideal clients are just, they're too busy, and you're talking about yourself, so they don't care. They don't know you. So if you can find a way in just 3 or 4 quick sentences to cut through all the other crap they get emailed and congratulate them or honor them for something that they've got going on in their business, it's okay to let them know that you love working with people that are of that caliber, or however you decide to do it. But I encourage you not to just condense a 10-year relationship into one email. And what I mean by that is, don't congratulate them, honor them, spew about you, and then try to get your foot in the door and try to get their business all in one email. Let this thing organically grow. Congratulate them. Be authentic and genuine in what they're doing. They're doing great things. They're hustling in their own industry. And you can give them a chance to interact with you and thank you for it, or just who knows what their response is. But you get a chance to reach out and connect with them on a level nobody else is doing. And that's not any different than any other escrow officer you would do. Now, the language for builders is a little bit different because builders, they're working at a very high pace. Like, to give you an example, like a regular escrow officer might close 30 to 60 files a month and be considered a top performer. These builder title officers, they might be closing anywhere from 300 to 600 files a month. So the pace in the office is just insane. They're very, very busy. Things have to be perfect. They have to be done right the first time. There's very little room for error, and it's happening at the same time. So there's not like on the refinance, you make a mistake, they send it back, it might delay funding, it might not. You have this little the rescission cushion to fix things. On a builder transaction, you don't have those. It has to be done right and correct. So when you use language about precision and right the first time and guaranteed same day document delivery. So if they send you out at 9 a.m., you guarantee documents are back by 3 p.m. at the latest, usually even faster than that, hopefully. That's the kind of stuff that gets their attention. Was that helpful? Clear?
You're in my wheelhouse. I think we talked about this before. When I was an escrow officer, before I, went to manager, I was working for the largest builder at that point in California, Watt Industries, directly with Mr. Watt. And when I left that company, I had 320 open escrows. And that was average. That's what I did. But I went further because back then there was no traveling notaries. My husband swears I was the first mobile notary. This was in the 80s. And I would take these documents. We'd get 6 to 10 of them in a day because a whole neighborhood would be closing out. And I would go to their model homes. They would open a model home for me, and I would travel to whatever location it was at. It's a service that you need to think about, that you can offer to these companies, to go to the model home rather than having people travel to the location that you're at. You can go to the model home where they're purchasing the property. They can do their walkthroughs. They can sign their documents and everything.
One of the big values for that exact scenario is a lot of times if the builder owns their own title company, they don't have as many branches as like a Fidelity or something. They might only have 1 or 2 locations in a metropolitan area. And some of these metropolitan areas, sometimes it takes hours to get across town. So if you can provide value in the mobile aspect of this business, where you're going to them or going to their community and just parking it at their sales office and signing their clients on their closing date, that's tremendous value to them. And there's, you might have less cost too, because printing expenses, they might print them right there for you. Now let me show you this tool. I know a lot of you are familiar with it. But this will come in handy, especially, this wasn't around whenever I was researching escrow officers and title companies and things like that. But let me show you whatever I did with it here. All right, not this. This is how I build my site. There we go. So just as an example, I just typed in Thomas title. And it brings up the main corporate website. The app that I'm going to tell you about is called hunter.io. Right up here. And let me put that, I'll just copy and paste that and put it into the chat window for you. Maybe, if it's working. There we go. So hunter.io is called an add-on. So it's a browser add-on for Chrome. And over here where instead of saying dashboard, it might say download. And it's a free download. So this is a free tool that you can use to track people down. And then what happens is you have this little button over here that's like a wolf, I think is what they're trying to be there. So every time you go to a website like thomastitle.com, I can hit that. And it does a search and it brings up all of these. In this case, it's a name and phone number, or name, phone number, and email address to anybody that has this Thomas Title email address on it. So that gives me direct contact information for probably my target audience. So that allows me to do further research. So I could take this, I could take their name, and I could do a search on LinkedIn, find out additional information about them, and start my research. And then start drafting a customized email based on what I have found. Super easy, super simple, and super cheap. It's free, and it works for any company, guys. So granted, we're talking about escrow officers right now, but let's say you wanted to go for builders. If you wanted to go builder direct, always remember, guys, when we go builder direct, we still are going with title companies. So you still have to find that bridge. You still have to find the title company that works with that builder. Then you've got your hospitals, you got your admin staff, you've got senior living centers. So if you have the name of a senior living center or the corporate entity that owns a lot of those senior living centers, you could go straight to the top to start getting some of those relationships. This brings the value of your network way up, because who knows what results or where these people sit in the company. Are they top tier level? We don't know. So you'll have to do additional research, but this gives you a huge leg up versus just Googling and trying to find some contact information or randomly messaging people on LinkedIn. Helpful? Hope so. Guys, that brings us right up to the 10 o'clock hour. Or the, well,
Yes, thank you, Bill.
Yeah, you're welcome, Peggy. Thanks for chiming in. All right, guys, that's it. It's been about an hour. Thank you so much. Before we go, though, Carol.
Yes.
What are you excited about this week?
I am very excited because we have some new people coming into our, what we call our merchants page. And I'm very excited that the new things that they're going to be able to teach our graduates. I'm also very excited because we might have somebody who is going to have the ability to provide E&O insurance nationally. It's an individual. She is a well-known notary. She has her own group. She's an amazing person. And I'm really excited about it, that I don't have to send them to a company to do this. That's what I'm really excited about. How about you?
That's awesome. I'm real excited to see where your merchants page goes. And I am very excited, guys, because on Wednesdays now we do the Notary Optimized website training, and that's where we're getting super specific, teaching notaries just like you how to search engine optimize their website. So starting this coming Wednesday, oh, that's tomorrow, starting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. It's a totally free to too, and you can join every single week. If you want to get on the mailing list for that, just go to notarywebsite.com. and you can sign up and get the email updates. But like I said, it's totally free. It's going to be a Zoom call just like this, and we've got a marketing expert who's going to teach that over the course of 12 weeks. So it's super intense and super free. Notarywebsite.com. Yeah, sorry. Yes, Carol, we can
Sorry.
hear you and your phone.
My phone.
There you go, notarywebsite.com. Thank you, guys. I want to honor your time. It is now 10 o'clock. If you're going to hang out for the Legal Shield for Notaries webinar, there's an email that probably just went out about 15 minutes ago, and you can join us then. Thank you, Carol. Again, thank you for your time. Joe, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate all the great insight. And yes, I will post this on YouTube in the next 2 hours.
Merry Christmas to everyone.
Thanks, Joe.